Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
We had about 200,000 people in the march asking for marijuana liberation, and people completely lost their fear for law enforcement. They're kind of in a complete civil disobedience concerning planting the seeds. So things are also happening there in Argentina. The government has also announced that they are looking to Uruguay as an example, so they are very respectful about the Uruguayan government, what they did this year, that was legalizing cannabis for recreational purposes and sales over the counter and distribution and production. So this is happening in this small, tiny country called Uruguay, which is surrounded by two big monsters, which is Brazil and Argentina, and we hope that the impact that Colorado and Washington brought to South America, also Uruguay will impact their next door neighbors. And this green tsunami will not stop, because this is a green tsunami that already started here in the United States. So I want to thank you all for this big effort that all these years you guys have done as an example for the rest of the world, this culture. And this is what we need. We need some of your culture over there to teach these people all the benefits of this plant, not only for using for recreational purposes from a harm reduction perspective, but also what it means for industrial purposes, all the jobs it can create, and how ecological it is, because cannabis is basically ecological. It doesn't need no chemicals to grow. It's better than all the pharmaceuticals and all the petrochemicals. You all know that. Okay, so I want to encourage you guys to go and vote in November for Prop 91, because as we are now, after Colorado and Washington, South America is also going forward for legalization. I think this is a worldwide process, and you guys can make a difference. It will be a huge impact if you pass this law. So I want to encourage all of you to take your friends and go and vote. To vote is very important. In some of our countries, like Argentina and Chile, we had this mean militaries who kidnapped a whole generation of us, and now we're able to vote again. Sometimes democracy is a lie, but it's a right. And if we can use it in the correct form, it will be a benefit for all of us.
One of those is a hempcrete ball. So what you have here is the inner core portion of the stalk, which is similar to some of what we have here in this bag, the little woody portions that you see in here. And then we mix this with a lime binder and water, and this becomes a non-structural component of the wall insulation. Or you can compress them into blocks to have structural components of the wall. It's breathable, resistant to mold, resistant to fire, and you can learn more about that at hemp-technologies.com.
And so that's carbon negative.
This is a carbon negative, is what the tests have shown for our colleagues in the UK. Now, this is one of the reasons why we want to be cultivating industrial hemp in this country, is it so that we can start decorticating those stalks to create that hurd that we'll need to go into this building application. And not only can you use this hurd in a hempcrete, but you can also use it in a hemp block. So here's a little bitty piece of pressed board. And this also is using the hemp hurd and then press. This is made in Canada. Nice, just a little bitty pressed block there. Keep all this organized.
I'll try to put it back
in
the
container. And then right here we have hemp insulation. So this is a pink insulation replacement, and you can get this in various sizes, and of course it's cut to be 15 or 16 inches depending on what you need. It can come with or without a fire retardant depending on your needs and building codes. So here we have, I think these are both made in like a needle punch machine. It's a non-woven matting. This is a very thin piece, so you could use this as what is essentially made into this briefcase right here is this type of matting that is then molded and infused. You could also use this as something to go underneath countertops or as perhaps soil retention. And last but not least, what we have here is the bast fiber on the inside. So this is the outside of the stalk, and these are the long bast fibers that you would use to make those non-woven mattings and to make the hemp insulation.
So I said last, but there's one more item here. You have hemp bast fiber.
Yep, hemp
Here's
bast
the hemp
fiber.
hurd fiber. You want to tell our audience the difference between the two?
Yeah, so this is the little woody core on the inside. This is the hemp hurd. You can see this in all cannabis plants. They all have the long bast fiber on the outside. And that bast fiber on the outside is what our colleagues like in China are using to make the amazing textiles, such as what I have on right now. This is hemporium from South Africa. And then the inner core here is the woody portion, but you could also use this in type of applications such as gasification to create heat in greenhouses and in homes. So this is a very
or
animal bedding. Amazing for animal bedding. We just cleaned out our chicken coop and we had the top part with straw and underneath we had the hemp hurd. And so surprising in Canada at our -30 weather how the hemp hurd was still really light and fluffy and it was able to remove the straw quite quickly.
Well, thank you.
Flatlands, they just went on and on. Before I ever got to the other side, I started missing home. Started missing home. Them people, they weren't as friendly. They'd all been traumatized by the rush of this here civilization. They all were trapped inside. So they went and they made a war so they could drive around a big old car. And they drive it all up in circles, but they never get that far. And they prey upon each other like it's some good healthy sport. And their idea of a wilderness is a condo at the resort. They only make rules that benefit the ones that lock you up. And there's not much more to say, except this whole place is damn corrupt. So I'm going back to my mountain, and there I'll spend my days. And I'll make love to my mountain girl, and I'll smoke my OG haze, and I'll live my old school ways.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate that.
We roughly estimate that about a third of the people are receiving letters of recommendation and approval for primarily emotional or mental problems, and that cannabis is a unique psychotropic in this context, in that it has effects on both cognition and affect that also are inextricably connected with different kinds of physical functioning. For example, with anorexia, people get inadequate nutrition because of their anxiety causing suppression of the appetite, and that when they receive cannabis, the nutrition is improved because the peristalsis and the spasm is relieved, peristalsis is promoted, so also evacuation, which then produces improved mood and improved functioning. With regard to cognition, this also includes people with thought disorders, and you might find this kind of unusual, but there are certain aspects of cognitive functioning that cannabis helps, like suppressing or decreasing obsessive thinking, and also paranoid ideation and paranoid delusional thought. Interestingly, the short-term memory loss that people experience when they acutely medicate with usually inhaled cannabis, they can't hold a paranoid delusion long enough. And the same goes for obsessive compulsive disorder, because they can't keep up this string of pathologic associations. Also, the modulation of affect also affects the cognitive behavior. With decreased anxiety, this decreases the pressure for this abnormal type of thought. I believe that a new category is warranted that cannabis fits, and that's easement. If you look that up in the dictionary, you'll see several meanings. And one of the main meanings is giving ease, not the property legalistic kind of passage or going on to some property and getting certain rights, but easement as a calming effect. And this is what I believe cannabis more closely approximates. It's not the same as a benzodiazepine, which produces sedation and, ironically, depression. There is no free lunch pharmacologically. So people do not like the benzodiazepines and other sedatives for these kinds of reasons, and cannabis helps restore emotional responsivity in a normal way. And this also goes along with people with their paranoid ideation and disturbance of interpersonal relationships. With certain people with thought disorder, they note that they're more able to relate to others, which then improves their self-esteem and their social functioning. You're never going to find this written anywhere because of the psychiatric literature being horribly biased. And I've looked through the APA publications going back maybe 70 years, and it all is tainted with the antisocial element and calling it dysfunctionality or character defect or other kinds of pejorative condemnatory terms. And it's all pill pushing. It's all medication. And to that end, we really don't know what is happening, and this extends not just to psychotropics, but I'm going to read you a short letter to John A. Kitzhaber, MD, Director, Center for Evidence-Based Policy, Oregon Health and Science University. And this is who I suggest if you want to contact to embarrass a little bit. On February 25th, I happened to view a panel presentation by your organization on C-SPAN on the cost-benefit study of different pharmaceuticals contracted by AARP. The sum total of that panel was they could not develop any cost-benefits analyses because in analyzing the pharmaceutical literature, they discovered it was all promotional rather than objective and scientific. So everything masquerading as science is not. So based upon California clinical experience with a range of chronic conditions, our findings indicate a significant advantage over other pharmaceuticals conventionally utilized because of improved quality of life and fewer adverse effects. Consequently, we request the opportunity to discuss our findings with you. Attached is a list of conditions. And guess what the response was? So I'm glad this is going over cable TV in the Portland area, and hopefully somebody out there in the viewing audience can give the center a call and ask them to include cannabis in their studies, and especially about the mental health issue. I would be fascinated to hear the response, but I won't hold my breath.
May I interject just very briefly? There's research I'm sure you guys are all aware of about the synergistic effects of the receptor effects of opiates and cannabinoids, where they basically are hitchhiking with each other, and much smaller doses of both medications create the same benefit with, of course, much less side effects. These are really remarkable findings, and I really regret that there aren't physicians who are just monitoring the reduction in the prescription patterns of their patients if they doubt that cannabis is useful.
You think that's new? If you read marijuana medical papers, in the Ohio State Medical Society meeting on cannabis in 1860, a Dr. Frommuller from Ohio reported that using an alternating courses of opiates and cannabis for treating chronic conditions reduced dependence on opiates. 1859 this was written. And so, you know, this is something new. No, we're talking about the takeover by Big Farm and ruining policy through their special interest money. And furthermore, the fact that this whole system, can I use my favorite phrase?
Oh, why not?
Monomolecular mercantile madness. This is all patent office driven. If you look back to what it was before the single molecule ascended to its role in current commercial medicine, you'll see that it's all secondary to what can get patented. And then they claim that the newly patented material is increasingly better, blah, 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 but then you see what's happened to the literature. It's gotten thoroughly corrupted and perverted so that you don't know what's happening. And here we have now a drug-seeking, drug-hungering public convinced that they need all sorts of combinations of patentable materials. And it's really sickening our society. And when they started directly advertising to the public, for psychotropics especially, ask your doctor. Social anxiety disorder, all these kinds of influences to influence you and their bottom line.
Any other questions?
Well, I think it's very interesting that we know from historical records that cannabis has been used for literally thousands of years, and nobody has ever reported any bad effects from the use of it.
Yeah.
And when you compare that to tobacco or to alcohol, there's absolutely no comparison between tobacco, alcohol, and marijuana. There's just absolutely none whatsoever. And the statement that that marijuana is a gateway drug to heroin or cocaine or whatever, this was verbally thrashed by the Institute of Medicine that said there was no evidence whatsoever that this was the case. So I think the main thing that we're doing is supporting General McCafferty and a whole bunch of DEA agents who are making very high salaries and don't want to give up the game, as you might say. So the people that are making money on the marijuana issue are the DEA agents. So I guess the federal prisons, the guards in the prisons are probably also recipients of a lot of money from the marijuana business. So
exactly.
It's really a strange, absolutely bizarre situation that this has gone on, and I can't understand why some of these politicians in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere can't see this or understand it or whatever the right word is. I don't understand it.
I was a battalion scout and point man, and any of you guys are veterans, you know what the hell a point man means. The life expectancy is about 30 minutes or so, something like that. And I was in a war history writing class with about 10 Vietnam guys, and I told them that I was a point man and scout. They says, "Oh no, you weren't." And I says, "God damn it, yes I was." And they said, "Nah, you weren't. If you were, you'd be dead." So here I am, mean as hell, and so forth. How many of you read the story in the Oregonian last week about the DEA trying to get hold of your patient's charts? How many of you raise your hands? You read that? Well, let me tell you, the DEA skunks and the local cops are all going crazy because you bastards have permits to use marijuana. When the board took away my license in November 3 years ago, I was really disgusted with this because they thought that they were punishing me. They were not punishing me, they were punishing my 4,000 patients. And I get the idea that they were trying to stop the medical marijuana program.
Marijuana is the best drug we have found so far for the treatment of PTSD. And within the last month, I just wrote an article that marijuana prevents PTSD suicides. And I got about 1,000 comments on it from all over the country.
Well, you know, I was in the military, but I didn't see combat. But I do know, as a marijuana user, that when I smoke marijuana, I don't have dreams.
Yeah.
And when I quit using marijuana after a couple of days,
yeah.
I start to have some very vivid dreams.
Yeah.
So obviously, the use of marijuana will help.
That is one of the worst symptoms of PTSD, and you probably wouldn't imagine what the second most important symptom is.
What's that?
Not being able to talk about what was your worst experience. Tell me about your worst experience. Bam! Just like
so
that.
Did you feel that way after World War II? I know you went through a lot of very traumatic experiences in fighting your way into Germany and meeting up with the Russians there.
My first day I was committed to combat. I got in an artillery barrage that just blew the hell out of this little town where I was, and the next day they hit me with a mortar barrage. And when we crossed the Rhine River, I got strafed by German planes. I got strafed by American planes. We lost 150 men in less than an hour.
Out of how many? 150
out of our battalion.
And a battalion is what, about
1,000?
About 1,000. So 150 out of 1,000. That's pretty heavy attrition rate. 15% in an hour.
We had my battalion, my division, had the worst casualties crossing the Rhine River.
Don't give up. You know, this struggle is built on hope. You know, hemp is the hope for mankind. Cannabis is a big form of a hope for the future, and there's not been a civil rights, human rights movement that has made it this far in America that hasn't won not long after. We really are making things happen. Yes. So my message would be, you know, keep going, ramp it up. Let's go in for the kill right now, because we're making progress. Go in for the heal.
I think that nationally the issue of legalizing marijuana is at a tipping point. I think that it's going to happen in the next several years. But I think everybody needs to redouble their efforts on making this happen, on actually making it, pushing it over the line. In spite of all the advances that have been made, we're still today arresting as many people as we've ever arrested, which is 1.8 million people a year in this country. We have an incarceration rate in this country among developed countries that is 4 times the per capita incarceration rate of number 2, which is New Zealand. That's crazy. That's insane. And what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting different results? Let's legalize marijuana. Let's start looking at the other drugs from a health standpoint rather than a criminal justice standpoint.
I would say come together right now and free the weed. That's the remix.
I just got to, like I always say, you know, everybody got to be more educated, you know, go out there, speak your mind, you know, people that don't know, let them know, you know, not everybody knows exactly what's going on right here, you know what I'm saying? People think we're coming together just to smoke and, you know, yeah, we're here to have a good time, but we're here to educate also, you know, to let you know that what hemp can do for us, what medical marijuana can do for their patients, and also, you know, just go ahead and go out there, free your mind, open it up, and let people know and educate, you know, educate yourself and others, you know, because like I said, other people don't know what we're doing here, so.
Yeah, really, some people literally, like, I know you think, oh, everybody knows about hemp and marijuana or medical marijuana. I hate to tell you, no, they don't. I've traveled to Chicago, I've traveled to New York, South Carolina. When I show them footage of stuff that we do, that we come perform and do for the cause, they absolutely freak out. There's no police around. You're not being arrested. What's going on? They're smoking weed. You know, it's crazy, but a lot of people are uneducated, and we want to educate the people. Believe it or not, I didn't graduate from high school. And look, I still learn every day of my life. Every day I learn something every day. So if I could grab that little bit of stuff that I learned and tell somebody else about it, that's how we're going to do it. And that's how I said, you know, with our music, we could serve the masses. And like they said, no matter what, this never ceases to, how do you call it, to come together and always say that the children are our future. That's why I'm not talking about like real babies, but you feel me, teenagers that are coming up, starting to experiment, and it's to educate them and let them know about hemp and how hemp could really save the world. May Jack Kerr rest in peace. I love you, dog.
Arm yourself with every ounce of knowledge that you could possibly retain. You know, go forward facing, I hate to say the word enemy, because really they're only an enemy if they truly know what's right and do the wrong thing. You know, but educate your friends, educate your foe, and in return, the world will follow.
I think that it has it's not just about helping patients, it's not just about helping people who have sicknesses, it's about, it's also putting, you know, it could put farmers back on their land. And I think that's there's so many reasons that it should be legal that I don't know where to begin.
Get active, you know, participate. In any way that you can. You have some skill you can bring to this movement one way or the other. You don't have to have money. You don't even have to have, you know, a high school education. It really doesn't matter. Bring whatever skills you have to the table and put them forward to move this movement forward, because it's the only way we're going to get anywhere. And even growing, even cultivation, that's part of it. It's a political act. It's just as good as standing on the stage and speaking from the stage. Just do it from the heart. Don't do it with the motivation of greed and money. Do it with the motivation of creating better medicine, better cannabis, you know, and stick to variety. Don't get bogged down in one strain, you know. Explore and enhance your life with the beauty of all of the different experiences that you can get from cannabis.
As it becomes, people become aware of the fact that reefer madness was just a bunch of crap, and it's a extremely useful drug, and it's been medically documented that it's good for about 200 different medical conditions, other than the first 9 or so that were what shall I say, make patients eligible in the state of Oregon. I have heard from many people, "Doctor, you have saved my life," and I think one of my poster boy patients was a Marine helicopter pilot in Vietnam. He was shot down 7 times. The last time he was in the hospital 31 months getting taken care of, and he was on something like 400 milligrams of morphine a day, which is enough to stop an elephant. And the VA would not let him use marijuana, so he told him to go fly a kite, and he came to me, and he told me several times, "Doctor, you saved my life." He was able to drop the morphine down to 60 milligrams a day because he was now able to use marijuana.
I think medical marijuana's time has come, but we also always have to be careful. There's always pushback, and we have to be ready for it, and we have to be prepared, know what we want to say, know what we want to convey to the general public so they're not afraid of us or what we're up to.
I really think we've got more Americans who have smoked marijuana than who have not. We show a majority of the Americans now favor the idea that we shouldn't treat smokers like criminals. So I think we're awfully close to a tipping point. It may come in November if California passes that initiative to legalize and regulate and tax marijuana. That is truly the beginning of the end, because other states will follow very quickly.
Get out there and put these efforts into hemp. The same energy and effort that was put into medical marijuana by the marijuana people, THC people, I think that same energy should be put into hemp. I think by putting that energy into hemp, it's more consistent, because when we go for the medical marijuana, that's just for us. When we go for the hemp, we're now repaying the earth, because it's for the earth as well as for us, because it's healthy for the earth. We've used medical marijuana and wanted it because it's healthy for us. Well, the same thing applies. Hemp is healthy for the earth. So I would like to see the medical marijuana put some of the same intensity and energy into now getting medicine for the earth that was used to get it for ourselves.
Yes, I agree. I'd like to see hemp around the world. I think that it could be solving a lot of the world's problems.
Well, this is what I'm saying. See, a lot of people think this or that, or have opinions about it. So what we're suggesting is go check out the facts about what can really be done with it. All right? I mean, from food to clothes. Go check out the facts. See what can really be done with it, because we've got to take it from being just an abstraction, hemp, as an add-on. You know, if we're talking about global warming, climate change, all of these things we're discussing and talking about, hemp has a tremendous impact on being able to help to balance what's happening. You know? So we're asking people, research, check it out, and if they're in agreement, to act on it. And if they're not in agreement, well, then they're not in agreement.
Be yourself and take some time for marijuana. I'm here for the weed. This is what I always like to say. Do some things to support it. Talk to people about it. Be an activist about it, right? Go to city council meetings. Support your homies. Show up at court when somebody's got a court date. Read West Coast Cannabis magazine, westcoastcannabis.com, and hang out and do your best. We're reaching the tipping point. So if everybody can do a little more, what's the old phrase? No one can do everything, but everybody can do something. So if everybody could do just a little bit more, take an extra 15 minutes per day to pump it up, pow, we're going to do it.
If you could say one thing to the marijuana community, what would it be? Get active. Short, but to the point. I'd like to add, guys, let's write the president. Let's follow the lead of this man and make sure that all of our warriors come home, because it's an unjust war. We all know that.
My advice to the marijuana community is get together, support the legalization of both hemp and cannabis as one thing. I know that there's a lot of like, okay, cannabis is good for this and hemp is good for this, but it's the same plant, and the fact that there's any plant that is that useful that is considered illegal by any government is criminal. And so wake up, people. We got to do it. No one's going to do it for us. So that's what I got to say.
You really have to stand up and do what's right. And I really want to thank from the bottom of my heart those activists that go beyond the call of duty, because we're pretty much all volunteers, you know, and the folks that take the time to come to these events and to sing to the choir and to teach the choir that they need to raise their voices and be heard. You know, the activists that come out here are my heroes. And if we don't stand up for what's right, no one's going to stand up for us. So we have to do this ourselves. So you really need to just do what's right. Help someone that's sick. This movement is going in a very fast pace right now. I don't want the folks to forget about the patients. Don't forget about us.
We spend too much time talking to each other. We're selling to the convinced. There's an element of our society that is the most powerful voting bloc, and that's the seniors. They're my generation. They're Woodstock. They're smokers. But they've been underground so long, they generally don't work for activism. In South Florida, where I live, they have no conception of what's being done with medical marijuana. And that's the petition we're trying to pass. When I get home, I'm starting a silver tour. I will go to the clubhouses at these hundreds of senior communities. I've got a great PowerPoint show, I've got videos, and I'm taking a doctor or a nurse to each one to answer legitimate medical questions. These people all vote, they all have their congressman's phone number, and they're not afraid to call. And it should go viral, because if they live in Golden Gates, they go to Golden Age to play cards, and they go over there to Senior Village to play bingo, and they need something to talk about. And if you talk to them about marijuana and Alzheimer's, marijuana and cancer, marijuana and MS, they have no clue. But they're going to have.
Well, you're doing it. It's happening. You know, Mark's mission to plant the seeds of freedom and overgrow the government has taken place. The roots are growing in the ground. The plant is flourishing. We're seeing things happen, and it is possible. And so you never give up, even though I myself am guilty of sometimes giving into despair and feeling like, you know, it's impossible to stop this. It keeps getting worse. There's more prisons being built and all of the horrible things that happen. Despite that, there's so much progress being made. And even if we don't see legalization in our lifetime, we have to lay the groundwork for our children and their children and for the future, because we have to do that. If we don't, we're guilty of allowing this horrible drug war to continue.
I always ask everybody this one question, sir. If you could say anything to the marijuana community, what would it be?
I used to tell them all the time, do not smoke in the rain. And many of them would ask me, why not? And I said, well, because of the rain.
Well, he signed 4 of my cards, guys, and he made me raise my hand and swear that I would not smoke in front of the police or underwater. And I didn't do either of them, I promise you. Dr. Levesque, I just want to thank you for being a great American, and thank you for being here, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Because we all live under the same Constitution and the same democracy, and if we don't use our free speech, then we don't deserve to have it, you know. And people died for our right to speak out against our government when it was, when it could make things better. And it's happened before. America's had to change laws to make America a freer place. We're saying do it one more time with these cannabis laws.
Well, I know that in Seattle the sky didn't fall, and to have that amount of people there and everybody getting along like they did, it speaks volumes for the marijuana movement. I'm so pleased to be a part of it every year, and thank you for letting me be a part of it every year.
But our government can only be as effective as the people. And so voting is very
important. And people might say my vote doesn't count. Well, the vote that's never cast never is counted, and so it's important to vote. It's important to be involved. If you're not involved, you're part of the problem. Be part of the solution.
If I had to say one thing, it just have to be the educate. Everybody needs to be educated on the marijuana. It's just a plant, you know what I'm saying? That's all it is. Just educate.
We have to legalize this. We have to end prohibition. This is ridiculous that it's been on this long. We have to make a stand. Go vote.
Biggest cash crop.
Go vote. We could save this country by legalizing hemp and cannabis.
And I think it's not only good for our health and safety, it's good because it creates jobs, and by legalizing hemp, in particular, we create a whole industry because hemp is really a gold mine of resources. And as a doctor and as a nutrition wonk, I can testify that there are incredible nutritional values to hemp. There are a whole set of fatty acids that are really critical for our health that are not otherwise widely available. So there are very important nutritional and food values to hemp, as well as potential as fuel. Its value agriculturally is especially important in this day and age of climate change.
I would speak to the women in the marijuana community, and I would say to you, my sisters, it's time for us to stand up. It's time for us to protect our children. It's time for us to grow our jobs and earn a sustainable wage. Please, please talk to your sisters, talk to your moms, talk to your aunts, talk to your babysitters, and let's end cannabis prohibition, end the fear, end the tyranny, and vote yes on Measure 80 in November.
I would say walk. What would I say? I would say keep going. I would say don't make a fool of yourself. I would say don't be confrontational, but keep going. Keep going. Don't let people shut you up. Okay? Don't let people put you down. Don't let people tell you how stupid you are. Any of those things. Keep going, because it's a totally sensible thing to do. Let me ask you a question. Okay? When it was decriminalized, so to speak, here in Oregon, did the murder rate go up?
No.
That's it.
actually, violent crime actually came down.
One thing I'd like to say, which people talk about a lot, and I've said this before, but it's true. I'm not an advocate of any particular use of anything, but cannabis it's an unlocking agent, among other things. And can I be blunt? Yes. Okay, the first time I took acid, okay, way back when, because that acid makes you laugh. Okay, it doesn't allow you to, it makes you laugh. Okay, you will laugh. And the thing that is the most funny that I remember is pomposity. Pomposity is the funniest thing on the planet. Once you learn to laugh at pomposity, the game is almost up. Because they can tell you what to do and what to think and where to sit down and when to shut up and everything else with their big uniforms and their badges and their pompousness. Once you start to laugh at... So all I'm saying is that some of these things are unlockers. They unlock your creativity, they unlock your sense of humor, and they allow you to see the ludicrousness of certain kinds of superiority, okay? I don't know how to fix guitars, so I bow to the authority, in that sense of the word, of a guitar repairman when mine gets broken. That's the only definition of authority that I give any credence to. The other one, you're not an authority, you've just got a gun. You can put me away for 10 years. That's not authority, that's force. That's all that is. So if we can get things square and straight with our terminology, and we can learn to laugh at the right time, and we can understand that unlocking our brains can be dangerous to some other people. Now we understand why they don't like us. I think we'll be fine. We just keep going. We allow people to slowly but surely understand that we're not endangering them. The murder rate isn't going to go up. The world isn't going to fall apart. The earth isn't going to get hit with asteroids. The dinosaurs aren't going to come back all of a sudden. It's going to go on. We might even get some constructive things done.
It's important to think for yourself, look into the stuff, don't listen to the lies. That's what you're getting in all mainstream media. So really, think for yourself. That's really get in there and study it, and you find out what the truth is. But you got to look for it to find it, and these are a good place to find it. Hemp stock here in Portland, Seattle Hemp Fest, these type of events, normal in San Francisco, the convention there that's coming up. These are important events. The more people that make this, the sooner we change these laws, the sooner a lot of people get out of prison. And so this is what time it is.
As long as people are just being locked up for cannabis, then we've got to change those laws, and we've got to restore hemp for energy, folks. That's the real key here. The whole reason marijuana was prohibited was to stop this, to stop hemp fuel being used. Now this is hemp seed oil with a piece of hemp twine here. This is next week's wick right here. And you can burn this in any diesel engine with no conversion to the engine today. You can pour that right into your diesel engine and turn the key and drive. And that's the reason it was made illegal. It's the petrochemical, pharmaceutical, military, industrial, transnational, corporate, elite, crony, capitalist, ruling class that have brought us hemp and cannabis prohibition.
All right. Industrial use, I don't see there any harm, and there's a lot of good uses for it. People fight it because of the, from the blackballing of it through William Randall Person's paper industry. I guess that's where it first started, but I don't mind the industrial use. I mean, it makes rope, fine clothing, fine paper, whatever.
Anything you can make out of hydrocarbon, you can make out of a carbohydrate. There's no reason to be burning fossil fuels when we don't have to.
If you can grow hemp properly, it is a material that contributes to sustainable agriculture because the tonnage of carbon removed from the air in the form of carbon dioxide is high relative to the amount of carbon removed from the air by other plants, like trees.
This is a unmodified 1983 Mercedes-Benz turbo diesel, and the only thing that we've done differently is put lots of wonderful stickers on the car and put hemp biodiesel fuel in the tank. That's it. No modifications.
Also, Mercedes-Benz right now has a Model 420 M Series, believe it or not, that's got hemp composite plastic dashboards and door paneling. And they're discovering that it biodegrades when it breaks upon impact. It doesn't break sharply, so it's less likely to injure a person.
And we've we've been on the road for 6 weeks now. Got 6,000 miles on the car. That's totally on hemp. And we've got another 6 weeks to go roughly before we end our tour in DC.
There's a lot of problems that have to be solved, and these can solve a number of them. Its fiber strength is up on the order of 5,000 psi. So you get a fiber strength that's equivalent to some of the toughest, strongest woods. When you process hemp fiber using a hydrogen peroxide process, you can control the pollution more effectively than using chlorine processing, which is used for paper. The hemp that comes out of this process can be made into oriented strand board. Oriented strand board is the largest growing sector of the materials industry for construction. Oriented strand board can be made with hemp fiber having a modulus of 6,000 psi, about twice the strength of ordinary particle board. This makes hemp fiber bonded with its own natural binders, a suitable material for underlayment, sheathing, and roofing substrate in houses and housing construction.
Industrial hemp is a strategic food and resource for fiber, which you can make clothing, canvas, paper, and also that cellulose can be used to make the new substance in 1936 that the DuPonts wanted it to just be made out of coal or out of oil. You can use the same byproduct, you can use the same product of cellulose in the stalk of the sensimilla. In other words, we could be growing medical marijuana and take the stalk of it and make plastic to build homes for Hawaiians at very inexpensive rates. Or we could build an automobile. I could show you a picture real quickly here on page 50 of a car that Henry Ford made out of cannabis. I know it's hard for people to believe it, but here's a car made out of cannabis that not only did Henry Ford want the car to be made out of plastic made from hemp, but he wanted it to be run. In other words, the fuel. There was a process where you could renewably take plants, especially hemp, and after you take the seeds off for the food, to feed starving people or to feed animals or to press that oil into the lubricating lubricants for the grease and the oil in the car. So literally we can use plants, natural resources given to us by God, our Creator, to solve problems here in Maui. Now, the National Review, which is the publication of the conservative right, and William F. Buckley, who is a scholar, has come out recently. This is the second front page in a year where he said, yeah, it's Powell, people. The war on drugs, is the war on drugs really lost? And he gives 17 scholarly points in this magazine where he feels that the way to go is harm reduction and immediate relaxation of laws against cannabis for even recreational use.
In a way, my attitude is, we can complain and blame the bad guys, and we can cry around a lot about how they're not fair and things like that, but that's who they are.
Always been that way.
All right, and that's just plain simple reality.
It is what it is.
And I just think when I look at hemp, I'm specifically towards hemp, is like they were mentioning earlier about the California Proposition 19. If that passes, see, then that's also inclusive of hemp.
Yeah, it is.
And, so there's kind of a major thing kind of happening around that part of it. But anyways, I'm going to say about the hemp thing, the only thing I would add is, is like the people that really are seriously environmentally oriented, I think that there should be serious consideration of hemp. It's just at least check it out.
Yeah, I think that's the whole reason it's illegal.
And then, the reason hemp is illegal is because, marijuana was made illegal in the first place to shut down hemp.
Exactly.
That's why it was made illegal. They went after hemp through marijuana.
That's correct.
Well, now marijuana's starting to come back in, so now bring hemp back in. The same way they went after it, let's bring it back in that way. But the marijuana prohibition had everything to, it didn't have anything to do with getting high on pot. It had everything to do with hemp. Cutting down the forest and the petrochemical now going to the oil stuff, all of this had fallen into place. So, yeah, but anyway, so I think people that are seriously considering about being environmentalist, and I'm not challenging anything they're doing, I'm just saying, hey, if you're for real about the environment, this is earth medicine. It's renewable, it's earth medicine, and it just plain and simply is. To the medical marijuana people, let's say, all right, well, we're getting the medicine for ourselves, now let's come back and get it for the earth, because, she's the one that's giving us our medicine in the first place. But see, I'm saying out of all of this, and out of the hemp marijuana people, we should be the ones that show our dedicated loyalty to the earth. All right, and hemp is, it's well, anyway, it's it's productive, and it doesn't harm the earth. You don't need the pesticides, you don't need the chemicals, realities.
Yeah, it helps regenerate the soil. You got your PhD from the University of Oregon Medical School, which is now known as Oregon Health Sciences University.
That's right, yes.
And while you were there, I know you told me the story about finding huge gallon jars of cannabis in the cupboard.
Yes. When I started as a grad student at the medical school, Dr. David, the chairman of pharmacology, says, Levesque, I'd like you to go in and straighten out the stock room, whatever, just straighten it out. And the first thing I found was a gallon jug of cannabis cough medicine. And at that time, it was illegal for cannabis of any sort to be anywhere. And this was 13 years after 1937 or so, something like that.
Yeah. About 1950.
And it was manufactured by Park Davis.
Uh-huh.
And so I said, well, if Park Davis paid me to go to medical school. So I just said, if Park Davis says this stuff is good for cough medicine, it must be good. So I poured myself a pint of it like this. And it's probably out in my barn someplace, and it's probably still good.
All right. All right. That's a great story. This is an Eli Lilly container. We're going to do our little show and tell here. Here are several cannabis-based products. This one is Sunny Hemp from Nature's Path. You can pick these up at most local grocery stores. Not drugstores, but grocery stores. And so they're nifty little hemp bars. Next door, we have Emerald Empire Hemp Munch toasted hemp seeds. Emerald, the hemp company of America, is based right here in wonderful Oregon, and it's a tasty snack. Right next door, we have a hemp tea product. I used to drink these in Switzerland back in the late 90s, and marijuana was actually legal in Switzerland from 1997 to 2002, when an initiative made the ballot in Switzerland. Switzerland invented the initiative process. It went into effect from 97, was voted down 52 to 48% in 2002. The United States DEA spent about $10 million to defeat it. That's in a country of 4 million Swiss voters. So our federal government went in there. The Drug Enforcement Administration spent $10 million to make sure the Swiss hemp bill lost, and it did.
I feel safer.
So, yeah. And so next door we have a embossed bottle of Dr. Craddock's Cannabis Indica. I don't know if you can see it on there. Well, you guys with the HD TV, you probably, oh yeah, there it is.
Nice,
Cannabis Indica.
Nice.
From Dr. Craddock of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Right next door, we have a full bottle, speaking of cough syrup, of Linden's Cough Balsam. And it is, it's got about a dozen different languages on it. It's
mostly Polish.
Most Polish and Eastern European languages. Right next door, we have a, what is this? This is the glycerophosphates compound with lecithin, a reconstructive tonic and nerve food. And the number one ingredient is Cannabis Indica.
Nice, nice.
And then here we have two bottles. There's one still in the box that's unopened, and I'm not going to open that because it's a lot more valuable. And this one just has some residue inside. This is the Lloyd Brothers Cannabis Extract. So that's